What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. Yes, I am still bald, although my hair's starting to like kind of go back a bit. I don't know if you could see with the lighting. It's come back pretty fast. Anyway, I wanted to put out a video this week with the last week of Major 3 qualifiers coming up and talk about the major teams that made changes, the 4 teams that made changes after Major 2, before Major 3, or during this cycle, and talk about how they're playing, where they're excelling, where they're struggling, and the things they need to work on this week. For some of these teams, like making winners bracket might be the major thing. For some of the other teams, they're already in winners and they've got a couple of things to work on before they hit land. So let's talk about the teams and dive in. All right, let's start off with OpTic Texas. And as y'all know, after their placing at Major 2, they decided to move on from Illy, aka Inder, and bring in Dan Ghosty from TFL Enterprises Decimate Gaming, the team that won the Boston Open at the Major. So this is their overall just sort of numbers prior to the roster change. You see like series record, pretty good. Map record actually pretty even, but it's okay. It's the first 2 majors. See that the sling's a little bit iffy. Keep in mind, like they had a lot of different combinations of players they tried over the cycle, and I don't think Cook was playing his best prior as well. And I also don't think that Ant was also, AK Shots, he's also playing his best COD. Search is good, but the control has been a real problem for them. 7 and 12. Surprisingly, controls has been a sore spot for them, and we'll take a look in a second of how that's evolved. But overall, like you look at stats and you're like, well, I think this is a decent team, and the placing in Major 2 suggests that, but in the end, they decided, whether for back-end reasons or not, to go ahead and make the change. Now we're taking a look at their stats through their 3 matches they played so far at this major. They still have 2 more left this week, so it's not a massive sample size. They do have to play New York and FaZe, so I expect these numbers to adjust slightly. But what we've seen so far in the matches versus LAG, Toronto, and Minnesota is a team much more improved than Hardpoint. I think that's less to do with like slaying, because you look at these slaying numbers, and you might be surprised to see that like Dashy's KD is a little bit low. Dan's KD is really low, but the subs are frying. That's okay. I think watching them play in Hardpoint seems like they're a little bit more organized. I think this is more thanks to Dan's comms and sort of him sort of shot calling, rather than I think just sort of head-on practice. I also think, again, it's been a little bit easier because their sub players are just absolutely frying right now. My only concern thing with their Hardpoint game, again, I feel like watching or listening to those listenings over the last 2 weeks, whenever they checked in with the team, Dan's doing a lot in terms of who's the last guy up, directing traffic, asking people what they're watching. If they start to get in more pressure series, is he going to continue those comms? Are people going to keep calling out? I think communication is one thing I'm monitoring, but I think the biggest thing is both Shotzi and Hook definitely stepping up in the slaying. And I'm not worried, by the way, about these AR numbers. I think they'll even out after the next 2 series. They were 3-1 in Hardpoint. Their only loss being on Hotel in that 3-0. Their S&D's been really good. Weirdly enough, the only map they've won so far is Asilo. In Search, they've lost Fortress and they've lost Mercado. So a little bit of work to do there, but overall the S&D numbers are decent. Dan's 0.68 is a little concerning through 4 maps, but let's see how it goes over the next 2 series. And then the one thing for this team is they still don't look their best in control. I think their control map pool is very iffy. They've tried a lot of different maps over the last few months. You can see the pick and vetoes. It's an update just for this major. This is like overall. And so for them, they've got a very sort of weak control game right now. And I think they need to sort of figure that out. It's a big swing mode. And I just think it's gonna be hard for them to be like a 3-1 team that only loses map 3. It just puts you under pressure to win that map 4. And then you win the first 2 maps and get reverse swept. Like, that's obviously tough. So I would love to see them play a little bit better in this game mode. It's been really a problem for them since the middle of last year, actually. I think the final thing for me with this team that I want to see them work on is actually Hotel S&D. They've auto-vetoed this pretty much all season. And I think when you look at the matchups that they may face at the major against better teams and playing like some of these really good teams on like maps like Embassy and Estilo that might be a little bit better than OpTic, or, RNS 50-50 maps, I think OpTic trying to figure out Hotel S&D might be really key. So I'm very curious if they're going to play it at all the next 2 series. It's sort of an obvious veto that they have right now, and it's sort of weakening their S&D map pool. All right, next up, let's talk about the Toronto Ultra. This is a team that actually made a mid-stage 3 change show. Not their best showing at the major. And if you really back it up, ever since they lost to Atlanta, or sorry, rather they lost to Texas, OpTic Texas in the middle of stage 2, they were on a little bit of this slide. They had lost about 4 out of their last 6 games. Wins coming against sort of a weaker LAG team. And I think the Boston is sort of the last straw for the squad. And again, just like the OpTic change, I don't think this really has to do with like almost overall performance, because the numbers are there to support that they were like a top team winning a lot of series. It's just when they came to land, they just had these difficulties getting it done on the weekend. Because like if we look at overall numbers, like everybody's playing pretty good. Gravit's come in and been like Rookie of the Year MVP candidate. But they decide, you know, okay, it's not working. We're going to go ahead and bring in Hixie and drop Standy. And so here are the numbers for Toronto Ultra in the 3 series they played so far with Hixie, only dropping 1 map versus the Vegas Legion, and that was on the Solo Control. They have looked pretty dominant in general. I mean, Hotel Hardpoint is back. That's a bread and butter map for them. They've been good in control as well. And I think the biggest thing, if you take a look at these numbers, is really how good that Kleenex is playing. He's the player that I think been the most improved with this roster change. Maybe the chemistry between him and Standy just wasn't there. But with him and Hixie, it's been really good. I think watching them play, Hixie very much is trying to sort of role play and do his best to sort of set up his teammates. And I think there's still definitely fit things that he's got to work on. The slaying numbers Hixie are just not that good right now. So we'll see over the next series they're going to play at this online qualifier versus London, and then land how he does. But the rest of his teammates are really frying. And so I think for Toronto, I'm excited to see if this is the change that gets them to kind of get this sort of top 3 facing again at the major, maybe make it to a grand final, because they have the potential to do it. I think they're in that conversation. It's just a question of, can they actually execute on a weekend, and was the chemistry fit the reason they were coming up short there. All right, next up we have the Boston Breach, and this is a team that after they got 3-0'd by Texas at Major 2, they decided, and Zin decided that was the end of his competitive career, so he retired, even though they got a decent placing at that event again. I think Zin talked about it. He was thinking about retiring for a while. He was going to do it regardless of the end of Major 2, regardless if they won or lost. So yeah, I mean, I think Boston is the same sort of thing as last year. Like, they are, when you watch the stats and you sort of watch them play, this is a good team. But just like Toronto, when it came to executing in clutch moments at land, making it deep in tournaments, they struggled a little bit at executing that really tough Major 1. And I know Big Way got sick. They played a little bit better in Major 2, but if you want to win, you got to beat the best. And they couldn't get it done against FaZe. And they mega choked in that series against Texas. Like, it was a bad 3-0 in terms of just collectively how they were throwing those maps. So they decide, okay, well, Zin's retiring. We're going to go ahead and bring in Beans. Let's take a look at how they've done so far during the Stage 3 qualifiers. So they have played 4 series so far, and let's be clear that they actually haven't played, they've only played 1 good team, Toronto, which they did beat in the first match of the stage. I know that's not the new Toronto team, but they played London, LAG, and Florida. So just to be clear, with this Boston team, and the asterisk I want to put is, yeah, you can only beat the teams in front of you. We haven't seen them play FaZe yet. We haven't seen them play New York. We haven't seen them play OpTic. These are teams I think are going to be a step up in competition, respectively, from Florida, who we'll talk about in a sec, like London. So I know that Boston also has Steve's coming up, so that'll be a big test. I think kind of taking a look at sort of the team post roster change, a couple of things sort of stand out to me. One is obviously Big Wake is still kind of doing his thing. I think Reese Vivid is one right now that's kind of really sort of struggling with his pace. It almost seems like maybe he's trying to play a little bit too fast. He's sort of averaging 4-ish more engagements than the rest of his team and 3 or 4 more deaths. Maybe he needs to slow it down. And Beans has come in and been a little iffy in hardpoint. Want to see him play a little bit better in that game mode. I think his overall KD is still pretty decent if we take a look at like Search, which he's been killer, and Control. It's the hardpoint that has been a little bit iffy for him, so want to see him step up in that game mode. But like overall, it's not like they have negative win records in all the game modes. They're pretty good. They played a lot of Fortress and have only won once in Control, so we'll see if they keep trying to play that map. But Hotel's a bread and butter for them right now. I don't think anyone's really going to square up with them on Hydro Hardpoint. I think that's going to get vetoed a lot. They did win 1 Embassy Search, which was a good map for them prior to the change. So I think the thing for me with this team is just want to see how they do against Thieves. Want to see a little more slaying in hardpoint, because it doesn't feel like their hardpoint game is just the area yet, but that might take some practice. My expectation for Boston going into this major cycle and Major 3 is they may really not get an amazing placing at this event, but I think at Major 4, when we head to Columbus with the no fan situation, that might be the best version of the team we'll see at Boston with like a month of practice. I think right now, yeah, they can get decent placing at this major. I just think they might need a little bit more seasoning in order to get there. But I will say, if they do get deep in this major, they look way better in Search right now. I would say the 3-2 record doesn't really do it justice, but I think how much better they look collectively as a squad in Search. I think Beans is a little bit more of an impact, a little more of an aggressive player than Methods is. So keep an eye on that. If they go deep in Major 3, I think it's going to be on the back of good S&D play. All right, last team we have is the Florida Mutineers, who candidly have not been a good team pretty much all year. And so they, after getting dumped in loses round 1, decided to pretty much squad wipe their team. I think they only really kept Havoc. They brought Brack in from the bench after benching him after starting the season with him, and bringing in Fellow and Capsule from different squads. So like prior to change, I mean, this is sort of an S&D squad, but the S&D like started to really kind of fall off a cliff towards the sort of end of this team. And man, you look at that hard point, 7-26 is just woo. That's just not good. I mean, they were just horrible at the game mode. All right, so this is the record with their new team, which they've stuck through all of this stage. And unfortunately, they've had a pretty tough schedule. Again, we took a look at the Boston schedule. Compare this to this. I mean, because Florida's had to play New York and Atlanta back to back, Boston and Seattle. So you might be playing like 4 of the top 6 or 8 squads in the game. Like that is really unlucky for Florida. So again, we talk about asterisks of Boston. I want to put an asterisk on this one with Florida, which is like they have a very, very, very tough schedule for this stage. And, you know, it's going to put them in a really tricky position with this 1 and 3 start so far. If they can win their last game, they may have a chance to sneak into winners. It is against LAG, and like I think that's a winnable game for Florida. But things start to kind of open up a little bit after that if they can kind of stick with it and keep sort of good vibes going to Major 4. You got Vegas FaZe, Rocker, Surge, and Toronto. And after that, they have LAG, Boston Thieves, London, and OpTic. So like the qualifier stages get a little bit easier after this. I think in general, this looks like a way better hardpoint team. And for me, I think really the linchpin of a lot of their really good quality respawn game is off the backs of Capsule. But I think that Cap has a lot of the similar problems he had last year. Like he's a really good instinctual, just will go on a streak type player, but sometimes he sort of ego chows and he plays a little bit too quick. You see that his engagement numbers are way higher than the rest of his team. His deaths are way higher than the rest of his team. I do think that, you know, there's an element of trying to play at pace with your team. Yeah, there are times where he's frying and just sort of going in that mode, but there are times where he's trying to do too much on the map. And so I think finding the pacing with him be really key. I think the one thing I'll say about Florida that they absolutely need to work on with this team is they're still bad at control, and that's not really anything new. There's a new squad, and on paper, just not a good control team, I'll be honest. The search, though, has fallen completely off the cliff with the squad. They look really poor in this game mode, and the only one they have is on Fortress, and that's a pretty straight up search map. The rest of their pool doesn't look particularly good. And honestly, the person that's been struggling, I think, the most in search has been Havoc, who's probably their best SD player. So I don't really know what's going on there, if it's a little bit of a system issue, if Havoc maybe is used to playing with his old squad and having a tough time adjusting with his new squad. But if this team wants to win series, it's going to be off the back of really grinding them out. And it starts with being a good search team, and 1 and 3 is just not going to cut it against the squads that they're playing, and they're going to play upcoming. So I need to see them get better at the game mode. As good as they are, or better now that they are in hardpoint. And again, keep in mind, both their wins are in hotel. They played a couple of close hydros that they kind of, you know, had an opportunity to win. And the embassies haven't been, you know, that close. I do think that they need to get better in search if they want to have a chance. But I think this team, I could see this team, if they get 2 and 3, I don't know those scenarios yet for tiebreakers. Maybe they win 1 match in losers bracket. I see this team probably getting like max top 8 at Major 2, or at Major 3 rather. And then we'll see after that if they can improve on those other areas. So yeah, that's the video. I just wanted to kind of make one and talk about the 4 squads that made changes. I'll do a predictions video tomorrow with my picks for the 3 match days, so stay tuned to that. Comment in the video. Let me know your thoughts on the topics we talked about today. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and we'll see you on the next one.